Rebecca Chen thought exposing a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme would make her a hero. Instead, it made her unemployable. After discovering her company's CFO had siphoned $23 million through ghost vendors, she followed every protocol: internal reporting, documentation, and meetings with the board. Her reward was a pink slip disguised as restructuring and a reputation destroyed by whispered warnings about troublemakers. 6 months later, working as a forensic accounting consultant from her studio apartment, she received an unexpected call from the Department of Justice. They needed someone who understood the labyrinth of financial deception she had uncovered. Chapter 1. The discovery that changed everything. Rebecca Chen never intended to become a corporate whistleblower. At 29, she embodied everything Stratton Industries wanted in a senior financial analyst: meticulous attention to detail, advanced certifications in forensic accounting, and the ability to transform complex financial data into comprehensible narratives. Her corner cubicle on the 14th floor overlooked downtown Seattle's financial district, where she spent 10 hours daily ensuring that Stratton's books remained pristine for shareholders and regulators alike. Stratton Industries manufactured medical devices that saved lives across 6 continents. Founded in 1987, the company had grown from a garage startup to a $3 billion corporation employing 12,000 people. Rebecca joined them straight from her master's program at the University of Washington, drawn by their reputation for innovation and ethical business practices. 5 years later, she had earned 3 promotions through her ability to identify cost savings without compromising quality or compliance. The discovery began innocuously on a Thursday afternoon in March 2023. Rebecca was conducting a routine quarterly audit of vendor payments, the kind of mundane task she could perform while listening to productivity podcasts. The company's newest accounting software had flagged several transactions for review. Nothing unusual, given the volume of payments Stratton processed daily. She expected to find data entry errors or legitimate rush orders that bypass standard approval protocols. Instead, she found Pinnacle Solutions, LLC, a vendor that had received $400,000 for consulting services that no department head could explain. The invoice descriptions were deliberately vague: strategic advisory services and operational optimization consultations. When Rebecca searched the company's address, she found a vacant strip mall in Nevada. The phone number led to a disconnected line. Pinnacle Solutions existed only in Stratton's payment system and nowhere else in the observable business world. Most analysts would have marked it as suspicious and escalated to their supervisor. Rebecca's forensic accounting training demanded a deeper investigation. She began mapping payment patterns, using data visualization software to identify connections invisible to casual observation. Over the next 2 weeks, working exclusively after hours to avoid detection, she discovered 17 similar vendors, all with generic names, all providing intangible services, all leading to digital dead ends. The shell companies shared subtle commonalities that revealed their orchestrated nature. Registration dates clustered within 2-month windows. Bank routing numbers traced to the same financial institution despite supposedly operating in different states. Invoice amounts stayed just below the threshold requiring board approval. Someone with intimate knowledge of Stratton's internal controls had designed this network to extract maximum funds with minimum oversight. Rebecca's investigation expanded into her weekends and lunch hours. She created encrypted backups of every document, stored on multiple drives she kept in a safety deposit box her employer knew nothing about. She photographed physical invoices with her personal phone, documented approval signatures, and traced authorization codes through Stratton's labyrinth approval system. The trail consistently led to one person's digital fingerprints: Chief Financial Officer Thomas Brennan. Thomas Brennan represented corporate success incarnate. Harvard MBA, former partner at a Big Four accounting firm, member of 3 corporate boards. His LinkedIn profile featured testimonials from senators and CEOs. He drove a different luxury car each day of the week and owned homes in Aspen, Martha's Vineyard, and Tuscany. At company meetings, he spoke eloquently about fiduciary responsibility and shareholder value. Employees respected his intelligence, even if they found his personality cold and calculating. By May 2023, Rebecca had documented $23 million in fraudulent payments spanning 3 years. The scheme's sophistication suggested Brennan wasn't working alone, though she couldn't identify co-conspirators from financial records alone. She faced an impossible decision: report internally through channels Brennan likely controlled, or become the whistleblower who destroyed her own career. Rebecca chose protocol over self-preservation. She compiled her evidence into a comprehensive report with an executive summary, supporting documentation, and forensic analysis that would withstand legal scrutiny. She scheduled a meeting with the board's audit committee for June 1st, believing that transparency and truth would protect her. She understood corporate finance perfectly. She understood fraud detection completely. What she didn't understand was how power protects itself when threatened. Chapter 2: The Price of Truth. Rebecca's presentation to Stratton's audit committee on June 1st lasted exactly 47 minutes before everything unraveled. She had rehearsed every slide, anticipated every question, and prepared responses to potential challenges. The 3 committee members, independent directors with reputations for integrity, listened with expressions that shifted from skepticism to concern to something Rebecca couldn't quite identify. When she finished presenting evidence of $23 million in embezzlement, the room fell silent for 12 seconds that felt like hours. Committee Chair Margaret Phillips, a former federal judge, thanked Rebecca for her diligence and promised a thorough investigation. The other members nodded gravely while taking notes on legal pads. They asked procedural questions about her methodology, requested copies of all documentation, and assured her that Stratton took such allegations seriously. Margaret specifically commended Rebecca's courage in coming forward and emphasized the company's zero-tolerance policy for retaliation against whistleblowers. 5 days later, Rebecca received an email about mandatory attendance at an all-hands meeting. Chief Executive Officer James Morrison announced a comprehensive restructuring to improve operational efficiency. The finance department would be modernized with automated systems that, unfortunately, made several positions redundant. Rebecca's name appeared on a list of affected employees, along with 2 junior analysts who had never worked on anything remotely connected to her investigation. The severance package was generous: 3-month salary and continued health benefits, with one condition: signing a non-disclosure agreement about all proprietary company information. Rebecca refused to sign the NDA, forfeiting her severance package. She cleaned out her desk while security watched, their presence ostensibly routine but obviously meant to intimidate. Thomas Brennan passed her in the hallway, offering a sympathetic smile that never reached his eyes. He mentioned how unfortunate restructurings were, but assured her that someone with her talents would land somewhere wonderful. His tone suggested otherwise. The job search began optimistically. Rebecca's resume sparkled with achievements: process improvements that saved Stratton $2 million annually, successful implementation of new accounting systems, and glowing performance reviews for 5 consecutive years. She applied to positions at competing medical device manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and biotechnology firms. The initial responses seemed promising, with recruiters expressing enthusiasm about her experience and scheduling preliminary interviews. Then came the pattern that every whistleblower eventually recognizes. Phone interviews would go exceptionally well until the moment they checked references. Suddenly, positions would be filled internally or budget constraints would eliminate the role. One honest recruiter privately admitted that her reference checks had raised concerns about cultural fit and questions about judgment, though nobody would specify what those concerns entailed. Rebecca discovered the invisible blacklist through a college friend working in human resources at a rival firm. Off the record, over coffee they couldn't afford to regularly buy anymore. Her friend revealed that informal networks had labeled Rebecca as difficult and potentially litigious. The Whisper network that usually protected employees from predatory bosses now worked in reverse, protecting corrupt executives from accountability. Financial pressure mounted with mathematical precision. Seattle's rental market showed no mercy for unemployed analysts. Rebecca's savings account, healthy when she had a steady income, dwindled at an alarming rate. She calculated that rent, utilities, and basic expenses gave her 4 months before insolvency. Health insurance through COBRA costs $800 monthly. Student loans from her master's degree demanded another $600. She eliminated everything non-essential: gym membership, streaming services, the weekly sushi dinner that had been her sole indulgence. Pride prevented her from fully explaining her situation to family and friends. Her parents, immigrants who had sacrificed everything for her education, would be devastated to learn their daughter had been punished for doing the right thing. She crafted careful explanations about seeking better opportunities and exploring different career paths. The lies tasted bitter, but less bitter than admitting the system she had believed in had crushed her for believing in it. Isolation crept in alongside poverty. Former colleagues stopped responding to messages, fearing association with someone who had challenged executive leadership. Professional networking events became exercises in watching people recognize her name and suddenly remember urgent appointments elsewhere. The woman who had once been invited to strategic planning meetings now couldn't get callbacks for entry-level positions. Chapter 3: When the Hunters Become the Hunted. Rebecca learned about the FBI raid on Stratton Industries the same way everyone else did, through breaking news alerts on her phone. September 12, 2023, started with her reviewing freelance forensic accounting contract from her studio apartment when every major news outlet simultaneously reported federal agents executing search warrants at Stratton's Seattle headquarters. The footage showed agents carrying boxes of documents while employees stood in the parking lot, their confusion evident even through pixelated phone videos. The freelance work had been her lifeline for 3 months. Small businesses needed forensic audits. Divorce attorneys required asset tracking, and insurance companies sought fraud investigations. The work paid a fraction of her previous salary, but kept her apartment and preserved her professional skills. She had adapted to the gig economy with the same methodical approach she once applied to corporate audits, tracking billable hours in spreadsheets that reminded her of better times. Her phone rang at 2:30 that afternoon, displaying a block number she almost didn't answer. Assisting United States Attorney Maria Santos introduced herself with the kind of measured tone that suggested every word was being carefully chosen. The Department of Justice had been investigating Stratton Industries for 6 months based on an anonymous SEC complaint. During their raid, they discovered something interesting: a comprehensive forensic analysis of financial fraud that surpassed anything their own investigators had compiled. The metadata showed Rebecca Chen as the author. Maria Santos had prosecuted corporate fraud for 15 years, sending executives to federal prison who thought their wealth made them untouchable. She recognized quality investigation work and understood the price whistleblowers paid for their integrity. The DOJ needed someone who understood Stratton's financial architecture from the inside, someone who had already mapped the fraud's pathways. They needed Rebecca, but more importantly, they needed her expertise coupled with her motivation for justice. The initial meeting took place in the federal building's sterile conference room, where Rebecca faced a panel of FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors who treated her with unexpected respect. They had already verified much of her original analysis, finding her work more thorough than investigations costing taxpayers millions. Special Agent David Kim admitted that Rebecca had identified shell companies they hadn't discovered despite 6 months of investigation. Her methodology had revealed patterns that their traditional approaches had missed. Rebecca's unique position, terminated employee, original discoverer of the fraud, and expert forensic accountant, made her invaluable to the prosecution. She could explain not just what happened, but how it happened and why traditional audits had failed to detect it. She understood Stratton's internal controls intimately, knew which employees had access to specific systems, and could decode the financial jargon that Brennan would undoubtedly use to obscure his crimes. The DOJ offered her a consultant position with the task force, paying her more than her freelance work while allowing her to maintain other clients. She would work from a secure office in the federal building, analyzing evidence seized during the raid and preparing reports for the grand jury. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same expertise Stratton had punished her for demonstrating would now be used to prosecute them. Her first day with the task force revealed the investigation's true scope. The $23 million she had documented was merely the visible portion of a massive fraud extending across multiple companies. Thomas Brennan hadn't acted alone, but had orchestrated a network of corrupt executives who treated corporate treasuries as personal piggy banks. The FBI had been monitoring communications, tracking financial transfers, and building a RICO case that would reshape corporate accountability standards. Rebecca dove into the seized documents with the intensity of someone who had been denied justice, finally seeing its possibility. She created timeline visualizations that showed money flowing between shell companies like a cardiovascular system of corruption. She identified authorization patterns that revealed co-conspirators, including 2 board members who had pretended shock during her presentation while knowing about the fraud all along. Her analysis transformed boxes of documents into a narrative that prosecutors could present to a jury. The work felt like redemption, though Rebecca knew better than to trust feelings in legal proceedings. She had learned that truth and justice were separate concepts that occasionally intersected but never merged completely. Still, every document she analyzed, every connection she revealed, every piece of evidence she clarified brought her closer to something she had lost, the belief that doing the right thing eventually mattered. Chapter 4. The investigation she was born to lead. The transformation from outcast whistleblower to lead forensic analyst happened gradually, then suddenly. By October 2023, Rebecca Chen had become the architect of the government's case against Stratton Industries. Her desk in the federal building's secured floor contained evidence that would send 17 executives to federal prison. The woman who couldn't get a call back for entry-level positions 6 months earlier now briefed FBI directors and shaped prosecution strategies that would redefine corporate accountability. The investigation revealed corruption extending far beyond Thomas Brennan's embezzlement. Rebecca's analysis uncovered a syndicate of executives across 4 companies who had perfected the art of corporate pillaging. They shared methodologies, recommended each other for board positions, and created interlocking schemes that made individual frauds appear like accounting errors. The network had stolen $80 million over 7 years, hidden behind the complexity that made modern finance incomprehensible to most observers. Rebecca's methodology transformed how the FBI approached financial crimes. Instead of following money linearly, she mapped relationships between transactions like a neural network. Her visualizations showed how seemingly unrelated payments form patterns when viewed through proper filters. She identified co-conspirators by analyzing approval patterns, vacation schedules, and communication metadata. One prosecutor called her approach forensic archaeology, excavating truth from deliberately buried evidence. Thomas Brennan's arrest on November 3rd made international headlines. Federal agents detained him at his Aspen home during a charity gala he was hosting for pediatric cancer research. The imagery of a handcuffed executive in a tuxedo became symbolic of white-collar accountability. Within 72 hours, 16 other executives were in custody, including 3 Stratton board members who had dismissed Rebecca's warnings 5 months earlier. The trial began in January 2024, with Rebecca as the prosecution's star witness. She spent 12 days on the stand, transforming complex financial crimes into narratives jurors could understand. She explained how shell companies function like financial parasites, how fabricated invoices moved through approval systems, and how executives had created a parallel economy within their corporations. Her testimony combined technical expertise with the clarity of someone who had paid personally for discovering these truths. Brennan's defense team, led by attorneys who charged $2,000 hourly, attempted to discredit Rebecca as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. They questioned her mental state, her motivations, and her methodology. Rebecca responded with the same meticulous precision she had applied to uncovering the fraud. She had anticipated every attack, prepared for every insinuation, and documented everything with redundancy that bordered on obsessive. The defense's attempts to paint her as unstable only highlighted the stability of her evidence. The verdict arrived after 3 days of deliberation. Guilty on all 47 counts. Brennan received 22 years in federal prison without possibility of early release. The co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 8 to 18 years. The companies involved paid combined penalties exceeding $300 million. New legislation, informally called the Chen Protocols, mandated enhanced whistleblower protections and forensic audit requirements for public companies. Rebecca's transformation was complete but complicated. Major corporations now sought her expertise, offering contracts that dwarfed her previous salary. She established Chen Forensic Consulting, specializing in fraud detection and prevention. The woman who had been blacklisted became the person companies hired to ensure they never appeared in similar headlines. She employed other whistleblowers who had been similarly punished for their integrity, creating a firm where truth was currency rather than liability. The justice felt hollow some days. $23 million in recovered funds couldn't restore the months of isolation, financial terror, and professional humiliation. But Rebecca understood that her story had become larger than her individual experience. She had proven that the system, despite its corruption, could still be forced to function when someone refused to accept its failures. Corporate crime continues evolving, but so do the people willing to expose it. Sometimes the greatest qualification for solving corruption is having survived it. Truth doesn't always win immediately, but it keeps exceptional records. How many whistleblowers are sitting on evidence right now, weighing their careers against their conscience? How many Rebecca Chens are being silenced while corruption thrives in corner offices? Share your stories of corporate accountability below and subscribe for more cases where the silenced become the system's strongest voice. Because sometimes the very expertise they punish you for becomes the weapon that brings them down.